All right. Hope everybody's doing good. We are here today with a writer,
I'd say that.
guitar player, and musician here in Kansas City. Scott
That's right.
Lane, how you doing?
Rob couldn't be any better.
Thanks for coming, man.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah. So we are obviously in a band together,
We are.
Dirtgrass Canyon, and you and I have had a pretty different musical path, I'd say.
Very much so.
How'd you get started playing, or how'd that all happen?
I kind of lucked out. I'm the youngest of a large family, and we always had musical instruments around the house. A lot of my siblings play or sing, so just growing up with it, being in that environment, helped. Also, because we had instruments around the house, if I was bored, I could just pick one up and just kind of started noodling, and really liked it. I probably first picked up guitar when I was, 10, 11, and I gave it up, I think. It's kind of hard to remember. Then I think about 14, maybe 15, I picked it up, and then it really started coming together. But at that time, and what really happened, we had the guitar and a piano, and the piano was tuned to itself, but not necessarily in 4/40 time.
Right.
So the guitar was always tuned to the piano, which was fine, except when we still had a record player. We didn't even have cassette tape. That the record player may or may not have been on 4/40 time, and so I never could link the two together.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't play along with records, and it really so I had to get like fake books and kind of learn the chords that way, which was for me a great way of doing it. Well, I think I was about 18 when I got my first CD player, and somehow we got the guitar tuned to 4/40, and then it was like a light just went off. I mean, because I could hear it and play it, and it just, for whatever reason, it came real easy to me. And so that's kind of how it got started, and it was just very, very slow. There was no mentorship. I didn't have anybody like older than me say, "Hey, this is how you need to do it." Everybody just kind of noodled on instruments. Nobody ever really took it seriously at all, or with the goal of ever playing out for people. And so then it just kind of slowly progressed from there, and it's still progressing. I mean, it doesn't. I've definitely not hit the top of the mountain yet by a long shot, and still learn a little bit. There's, at 46, there's a lot of things I wish I would have done differently, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Just
like what?
Well, one thing, I wish I would have had a mentor, because somebody say, a silly example may be like, when we were 18, 19, we all wanted giant amplifiers. These things were big enough to play Sprint Arena, and you had to have a U-Haul to haul them. A good mentor would have said, "Hey, all you really need is just a small amplifier, and it's not about size. Doesn't always necessarily matter."
Right.
And so things like that would have been helpful. But I had to learn. I mean, it's kind of funny because even like a microphone, as silly as it sounds, we didn't have a PA system. Nobody I knew had a PA system, and so I probably did a band or two early before I learned how to use a microphone properly, and how I go.
Right.
That's a tool, and it's kind of like an instrument, easier to learn how to do. But it wasn't until I was playing in a band and we had a female lead singer, very, very good, and I remember she owned that microphone, and she really had control of it, and she really, that was her obviously her voice was her instrument, but that microphone might be her second instrument.
Sure.
So she really kind of taught me. Well, I would say she didn't teach me, but through casual observation, I saw how she did it, and I thought, that's how you do it. But it took a while.
And that's interesting because I'm in that same exact boat, because I played, strictly acoustic style. And then here in the last 15 years now, I've started dealing with all these amps and the mic, and and like that's it's a whole nother deal.
Absolutely. Well,
Pulling off of it or dealing with your amps and the pickups is a big thing for guitars and stuff.
I call it the electronic side of it.
Right.
And I'm not proficient in the electronic side. I'm not really that interested in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The most important thing for me electronically, not only does it have to sound good, but it's got to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're playing live,
Mm-hmm.
you want when you turn it on, you want it to work. I know there was years ago they had the tube amps, 50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they went to the transistor. Well, one of the reasons they went to the transistor,
They always worked.
They always worked, and so you didn't have to worry about banging them around in a truck. Well, now the tube amps are better, especially as far as the traveling ability. You can kind of do that. So yeah, the electronic side's different, and even now I haven't mastered it, but I haven't really studied it either.
Right.
I'm not even a journeyman musician. It's a apprentice musician still, and there's kind of a cost to value issue that how much do you really want to put on the electronic side, because it can not only get expensive, but sometimes it's just the older I get, it comes down to travel ability, the weight. I like speakers that weigh 20 pounds or less.
Yeah.
At 18, I was glad to haul around a 100-pound speaker, but now it's changed. So, and
you said something interesting earlier, and I think one of the reasons musically why you and I kind of hit it off, I think, is that we both came from a different place, like, of our musical taste, but there's a spot there that has really united us where, I'm really always excited about our set list and the kind of songs that you like, even though there's kind of a country side of kind of really old school country that I think you appreciate more than I do.
Sure.
But there's a whole bunch of stuff, like I've noticed with the type of songs that you like to pick, there's, quite a bit of minors in there. You do pick a lot of songs, like a couple of examples, Dixieland Delight,
Sure.
Country Roads, some songs that aren't just 2-chord tunes all the time. And I thought that was interesting because you were talking about learning finally at 18 off of CDs, and like it's pretty obvious that from the stuff that you like to play, a lot of like a band like the Eagles was obviously a pretty big influence on you and many others.
That's exactly right.
And it kills me when we're out, not just with the band, but you and I. I mean, you drop like like Conway Twitty on me and like all these random songs, and it's amazing how you've heard all those.
And one thing about music that's changed from when I was 14 till now. When I was 14, music had more of a emotional impact.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a song and you're like, you put yourself in that scene, and it really shows the power of music. When you listen to a cowboy record, next thing you know, you're a cowboy. It's kind of like watching a movie. Well, the older you get, you lose that.
Yeah.
And so now, picking songs has always been difficult, because do you pick the ones that you like, or do you pick the ones people want to hear?
Yeah.
And so I can't say one's better than the other. I do know if you're selling a product, and at this time I do believe this, that if you're selling a product, as long as you believe in the product, you can sell that to somebody else.
Yeah.
So if I believe in the song and I can present the song well, there's an audience for it, and you can get somebody who's never heard that song, hopefully to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But that's, like I said, I could spend hours just on that part of it, because and I know you're probably going to get into the entertainment side of it, but when you picking songs, I'm trying to say this, when you're picking a song, they want it to be an entertaining song. And if you were a very entertaining person or had an entertaining band, you can still play a song that may not be as entertaining because you have a light show, a fog machine to provide that entertainment.
Yeah.
But I've had go-arounds with several people through the years saying, "Oh, that song's I don't like that song. It's boring, and it's not entertaining to them. You need to play something more up-tempo. Usually, it's play something faster.
Sure.
But with I always thought, well, if I had the bells and whistles, that, can set the scene. It's almost more theatrical. That they would see that side, but you can't expect an audience member to be visionary. As a musician or as an entertainer, you're the one that really has to be visionary, and you're trying to bring something that is entertaining. And so it's hard to do. It really is, especially when you don't have the
lights, the Gene Simmons tongue, and then the costumes and like all that stuff.
A major. The band Kiss couldn't do what they do at a bar and grill.
Yeah.
So
and this is something with the entertainer idea that we always argue about this a lot in kind of the jazz world or the artist kind of world, where we all get annoyed with the Sweet Home Alabamas and all those songs.
I would, sure.
But I heard somebody say that nobody goes to a bar for musical homework tonight. Like you're playing, in 13/8 and all these time signatures, and you're so artsy, but nobody wants their musical homework tonight. And
here's where I differ with you, though. It's not everybody, and you can't categorize your audience just into one group. It's finding the right audience.
Sure, yeah.
And it is putting your music that you like to play in the right venue with the right audience. Yeah. And the great thing about today, I'm sure maybe it's been like this for 100 years, but there is an audience for everything. It's just hard to find. If you're playing fusion jazz, well, maybe I don't know, some small town in western Kansas may not be your best venue for fusion jazz. So,
well, you always make the joke at our shows, about, this year when Rob decides that he wants to, make some money, then he becomes a fiddler, and then when he decides to,
and that's not really true.
Yeah, I
haven't made a lot of money, but it's a great joke.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends what mood people are in. I mean, when people go to a jazz show, they know that they're not going to be dancing on the tables.
And they don't want to hear play funky music, White Boy and Piano Man, and because you always remind me of Lonnie McFadden in the sense that you guys are very, in my opinion, less interested in doing 9/8 and 13/8 and doing songs with 84 chords in them, where you guys are more interested, just like you were saying a minute ago with the show, and the fact that because people like a Miles Davis were like, dude, screw the audience, I'm playing this, screw you guys, and
But I don't know what Miles Davis's highest selling album was.
Well, Kind of Blue, best selling jazz album of all time, but still, it was still the idea that there were a lot of people that he wasn't ever gonna reach ever, because he was just,
The band Foreigner was on TV yesterday. And I Wikipedia'd them. They sold over 80 million records.
Right.
Now, I don't know anything about Miles Davis, but I gotta assume let's just say for sake of argument, he never sold anywhere close to 80 million.
Yeah.
8 million.
It's hard to say.
Well,
I don't know the numbers.
If you're a record label, you want Foreigner all day long. I mean, that's so that's
and so that gets into the. Go ahead.
But I was gonna say, I've only seen Lonnie McFadden one time. Actually, I've seen him twice because I saw him and his brother. They were with Wayne Newton at Starlight,
right?
Which I didn't even know who they were. But Wayne Newton introduced them as two guys from Kansas City, and they did they sung. I think they were playing. I think they were playing instruments in the band too. They're part of the band. Plus, they did kind of a dance rap thing. Yeah. It was for entertainment. It was not necessarily for the quality of the entertainment. And then the only other time I saw him was at the Phoenix. It's downtown. I saw him at the Phoenix, and I saw what he does. He's much different than I am.
Sure.
He's going to do what he does. he's probably very consistent. He never changes his. He's gonna dance. He's gonna if there's a tabletop he can get onto, he's gonna do it. He's never gonna have that off night where he's gonna I'm just gonna sit on a stool and play.
Yeah.
I will.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes, and unfortunately, I hate to say this, a lot of times it's just fueled by the crowd. If I got a good crowd, it kind of brings out maybe a few more jokes, maybe off-color jokes. And which was really the wrong way to do it. Lonnie's absolutely right. You should probably be consistent all the way through, whether you have 2 people or 200.
Yeah.
But I am what I am.
Yeah. Well, you guys are different in that sense, where you'll sit on the stool and he'll be consistent and stuff. But I would say you two guys, as far as I'm concerned, is just an example of somebody who would who these people would know. Is just he's willing to do on Broadway, he's willing to do some of those songs at the Phoenix and in a jazz group,
Sure.
and he'll do My Girl, right? He'll do, some of these songs that a lot of the jazz musicians will be like, rolling their eyes over. But he is when I talked to him, he was talking to me about, you can go do your originals, and you can go, have your integrity, and try to, do all this, high level jazz and all this crap, but don't be mad when you're not making any money. Just don't bitch, is what he was saying. And I think you and him are more aligned than the hardcore jazz people and Lonnie are, it's kind of, I guess, my point.
And I would disagree with them on that, because if you're going to do an originals, you can do it.
Oh yeah,
Just write great originals.
Yeah, he wasn't saying don't ever do originals. He was just saying if you're going to have this mentality of just avoiding peaceful, easy feeling for the rest of your life, it's a good song. Why don't you play it? That kind of stuff.
Without a doubt, except there's the creativity element, because if you are an artist, it'd be no different than if somebody was making copies of the Mona Lisa. Let me preface it this way. This might be anybody in Lonnie's situation. They do a great copy or near copy of the Mona Lisa, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. I get tired of it occasionally. And I was like, I want to paint my own painting and see where it stands. Yeah. But what I do is try to paint one that's original, that's very close to the Mona Lisa.
Right.
Almost a copy. And so that's where when it comes to writing, that's where I try to go, because I don't want to go too off kilter with it.
Sure. And and then the other thing that, again, I'm just using as an example, but one thing that both of you guys are very good at is talking with the crowd. I would argue that you're almost even better at him than talking to the crowd, but talk about that, of why you think that's important, or like...
Well, because music can only do... that's not really fair, because in the situations I find myself in, when you're at a bar and grill, it's different if you're on a huge stage, and because let's say the lights are so bright, you can't even interact with the audience. There is no... matter of fact, that's 2 different ways of looking at it, because when you say interact with the audience, when I'm at a bar and grill, when I interact, it's usually I say something, they respond, then I can go back and forth. Well, when you're in front of a very large audience, you can't do that.
It's one way.
It's all one way. So you got to plan your show accordingly. And I think that's one reason you might see a lot of musicians only play the music while they don't interact, is because it is just one directional. What can you say? So that makes it difficult. A lot of times you really got to choreograph the lines, and so it's things that are guaranteed to get a laugh.
Set me up there as Ed McMahon, bait me
kind of,
in, all that
you
kind
can
of,
do that
with
with going back to Wayne Newton. I saw him. It's probably 20 years ago, and he was an absolute master of it. I mean, he could barely sing, an okay musician, but what he did is he was kind of the front man. He's got this huge orchestra, and he utilized every member, not only as somebody playing an instrument, but also their personalities. He knew, and it was brief with each person.
Sure. Yeah.
But kind of like with Lonnie and his brother, where he goes, hey, these guys got other talents besides just, playing an instrument. So that's a little different when it comes to interaction. The other thing too is when you go to a concert, they may only play for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well, I have to play. I'm there for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Well, try to be entertaining for 4 hours. Well, the only you can play music, and maybe that's enough. Especially if, let's say it's a dance venue where they can dance, and that's fine. But you have to get the audience involved.
Yeah.
And to me, and what's most fun to me is when the audience is involved, more than just listening.
Yeah.
Where you can get them going and makes them feel like an active participant. That whatever they say is going to get a good response.
Because what happens when you don't do that is they sit there and talk to their friends at their table, and that's it, right? I mean, they don't really even get... Because that's what you do, is you get the eyes to the stage. And in a couple of my other bands is that we never had the eyes to the stage, and we turned into like background music, which there's a, but you do a good job. And Lonnie does that too. He gets the eyes to the stage,
But I think that it's also, not everybody wants it either. The world may be filled with 50% introverts and 50% extroverts. Well, depending on which way you're going, you could lose the introverts.
Right.
They don't want to be called out.
Right.
And so you have to be kind of careful.
Yeah, sure. The other thing is, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is how you get those eyes to the stage. And I think, I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on this, is that there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can do it by a J-Lo, or a, really, hot chick up on stage. That's one way. You could do it with the Kiss style, where you got the tongue and the costumes and laser lights, and so it's this big production. But another one that you kind of go is maybe the comedy route. And that's one of our conductor at college kind of did that, where he would say all these jokes, and because he was so funny, we're sitting here waiting for his joke, but all of a sudden he accidentally doesn't say one for 5 minutes, and then we're still sitting right here listening to him for 5 minutes. So it was kind of a ploy to get us to look at him and pay attention.
Sure.
And the funny thing that's happened with you a couple times is that you'll say one of your jokes that requires them to say something, but then you'll get like a mini sort of heckler, and anybody knows what happens to a comedian when they get a level 3 heckler, is you come back on top with a 10, and like it's been funny to watch hecklers against you, because it doesn't usually end well for them.
Well, comedy, I would recommend, if somebody's trying to do comedy, plan it out. You have guaranteed lines. You've heard me do it 1,000 times. There'll be some lady, and I'll say, hey, do you like to sing? And she'll be like, yeah, I love to sing. Then I'm like, do you sing in your car? And she goes, I sing in my car all the time. I said, well, do you sing in your shower? She goes, yeah, I sing in my shower. And I'll be like, well, how about I come over and listen to you sometime and hear how you sound, right? Well, that's a very clean, funny joke. Yeah. One of my problems is I try to do almost like an improv. And with comedy, it's very easy to offend people. So you have to be very careful when you go to like a comedy show, or let's say it's somebody. Let's say you went to Richard Pryor back in the day. Yeah. Well, you kind of have an idea what's going to happen, and you know what kind of language and the subject matter he's going to talk about. Well, if I'm playing at a nightclub, bar, or grill, they don't know, and so it's very easy to offend people. And that's really the last thing I want to do. But at the same time, I call it hee-haw humor, which is fine humor. Right. But that usually takes a setup guy, a straight man, to pull that off. Yeah. Well, I don't have that option. So it is kind of, I'm bouncing stuff off. And usually I always try to have a big smile on my face, and if you're trying to be sarcastic, make it obvious sarcasm. Yeah. But you have to be kind of careful, because like I said, they don't know you, and they don't realize, hey, this is all in fun. Right. And people have different.
You've had that before with some of your jokes, where I mean, definitely I remember one joke you told, and I was just like, oh. oh God, he's like, and you're like, that's what's so funny is that people don't understand that it's a joke sometimes, and that's
Yeah, and
that's why it's
I love
funny.
deadpan humor. That's
Right,
one of my
yeah,
favorites,
yeah.
and I don't know if I'm any good at it, but I
Yeah.
love it. But I do know there used to be a song, "Rich Young Dumb Nymphomaniac."
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Jason
Oh yeah, I
Bourne
know,
did.
yeah.
Funny song. I thought it was hilarious and
Right.
everything. I was playing with the guy who did it, and when he did it, it was hilarious.
Mm.
When I did it, it has a lot of vulgarity in it.
Sure,
But
yeah.
it's funny. And when he did it, it was great. When I did it, it backfired.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Because people expected that out of him. They didn't expect that out of me.
Right.
I couldn't sell the song.
Mm.
And then I realized, so yeah, that was a learning lesson. Again, if I would have had a mentor that said, hey, don't do that. But one thing I rarely do I ever cuss on a microphone.
Yeah, you do really well with that.
Yeah, I
It's
just don't
not
do that
cussing,
because
yeah.
I'm always afraid if you start going down that road,
Yeah.
that becomes your audience.
Right.
And the places that we play around here, that audience isn't there. And
Southside OP, the gangster central.
yeah,
out here in
you're not
Oakland Park.
gonna. So that's one of my.
Something I think even with the comedy stuff, I'm always fascinated by how people, because I'm really bad at that. Like the band that I ran was really bad at getting eyes to the stage because we were playing musicians for musicians.
Well, you say that, but
and
you may not have reached everybody, but
Yeah.
you may have reached one person. You just don't know it.
Sure, yeah. But I think what was funny is when you do go the comedy route, I've noticed that some people who aren't comics or who aren't somebody like yourself who's been funny their whole life, you know exactly how to go right up to this line and dance on it and then put your leg over and you can like go to this line and you know exactly where the line is generally, and there's other people that don't, and so I've seen other guys try to make humor in their shows and it just is dumb because they're not funny and they're trying to make it funny, and I just think that's funny that
I appreciate the compliment, but
Yeah.
I've gone over the line many times.
right.
And I feel horrible about it.
Yeah,
Because
didn't you say one out of 100 ain't gonna hit at least?
Yeah.
If not more. Yeah.
But they're going out. This evening belongs to them. I'm just a musician playing. They go out. They're the ones that are spending the money.
Mm-hmm.
Having a nice time, and I don't want to take that. I want them to go home and say, what a fun evening with a fun band. Where I don't want them to go, what a horrible evening because some Yahoo musician couldn't keep his mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a fine line.
Yeah.
How do I know? I think I'm pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I'm sure, matter of fact, I know I've offended people. But
Oh,
I've
yeah,
been
yeah.
told.
Oh,
I've
sure.
apologized several times.
Yeah.
And I'm not above apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah.
welcome to the world of entertainment.
I know. So you were talking about there's been a handful of songs that you've written that I think are absolutely fabulous.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, and I can think of at least 4 or 5 off the top of my head that we play quite a bit in our band. And one thing that I always, and this sort of gets back to the entertainer idea, is that because I did 2 albums myself, and that 13-minute instrumentals and all this crap,
Sure.
and then somebody comes in with a on the road again kind of song, and
2 minutes and I think
2
20
minutes,
seconds,
and
yeah.
what'd you say, 27 times or something? He says,
Yeah, I came out, I think 17 times
17
in a
times,
song
yeah.
he says on the road again.
and like it's absolutely perfect. I mean, it's an example of this geniusly simple song.
Brevity is the soul of wit. And
I think some of yours fall into that category, and obviously Nebraska is the perfect example of that, where chord wise pretty easy, but it's just an absolutely awesome song, and we have a ton of fun playing it.
But one thing to remember with that too, you can write what you perceive to be a great song, but you also got to have the production side of it too. It's one thing to have words and a melody. It's a whole nother to have, whether it's violin, horns, or whatever, to bring that song to life. to get across like other, let's say other bandmates. You say, hey, I've written this song I think it's going to be great. And they hear it and they go, a good example, I wrote this song that you and other guys in the band think it sounds just like Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton, right?
Yeah.
And you're right.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that if it was recorded properly, it would change it enough to where you'd be like, well, it kind of sounds like it. It doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
And that's on the production side. And so what makes it great, I guess, like I said, thanks for the compliment. Is it only 4 or 5 songs? I thought there'd be more than that.
Those are the only, those are the only ones I can think of, the names of them.
No, songwriting's tough.
You throw songs at me at a gig, and I don't know what these songs are,
Songwriting's tough because...
Yeah. What do you think about when you're writing a song, typically?
Well, actually, I don't. It's not like I go off into a room, and sit there for days on end. I can sit at a computer, and I write it out that way. That way, I can make corrections because phrasing and all that. It's much easier to do on a word program because you can,
But so are you doing words then first?
No, always melody.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I say, the melody always comes with the words. The weird thing is timing. Because a lot of times when you call it that music rush where you played all night, you're driving home at 2 a.m, your head's just kind of spinning, you're probably very tired. That's a lot of times when these melodies and words kind of come out. And, a lot of times I'll record them into my phone so I don't forget them. Sometimes in the middle of the night when you're sleeping, I've actually woken up before and go, I'm singing a song in my head. Those are...
Oh, God, now I got to get out of bed and write it.
Those are great.
Yeah.
Some of them I just don't remember, like Nebraska. I remember where I was writing it on a yellow pad, but I don't know how it ever came about. It just did.
That's cool. Because I know for me, lyrics are always hard for me. Writing the song
lyrics
itself,
are very, very tough.
Melody is a little bit hard for me too, but coming up with the whole flow of the song and the beat and the chords and stuff is like really easy for me. But I always have trouble with lyrics, and a lot of your lyrics are pretty good. So I was wondering if, because I'm always fascinated by, because they talk about who's Elton John's guy.
Bernie,
how they had kind of this teamwork thing going on where he'd come up with all these words and then he'd give it over to Elton and he's like, okay, hold on,
but at the same time, I don't see how that works because if he writes something, somebody else, that, let's say Bernie wrote something that Elton doesn't like, and Elton says, I don't like that. Well, then Bernie has to have a sense of,
well, I'm sure that
dejected,
happened.
Going, I can't believe you don't like that. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
but then they go, well, how big is the check?
Yeah,
I'm sure, the check.
But my point is what came first, and so Bernie, obviously, his stuff he gives Elton, so he has lyrics first, then he figures out music to it, and it sounds like yours is your melody's coming with the.
Bernie, though, my guess is probably a very good musician.
Sure.
He's probably sitting at a piano, and so he may come up with melodies and put words, and Elton takes it and elaborates the melody and maybe makes it more, maybe changes the melody. I don't know if it's that defined.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about their history.
Yeah, it's kind of irrelevant from them, but I'm just always fascinated by what's coming first. Because I always, just for anybody, for you or anybody, because mine was always music first, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'll put some words to this, and the words are always terrible because of that. And
it depends what you're trying to sell,
And you were talking about country. We've talked a bunch about country music as very story driven, are you thinking like in stories in your head a lot for songs or?
Yeah, I mean, I like I guess that's very true. I like when the songs tell a story.
The ponytail one we did last night was very story-like.
A start and a finish, where I really like that. Sometimes the wrong word, not using the right word, can kill it. It's funny how that works. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. But I learned a valuable lesson one time because I was writing songs. I never had a band to play out with them, and I didn't playing some of the songs like That Girl from Oklahoma. It's not designed for a guy and a guitar. It's meant to have a full band, just to pull it off.
Yeah.
So I never could do it, even though it was there. Well, one time, this has been 15, 20 years ago, I played that song. I kind of ran out of material, and there were a bunch of girls there at this bar, and they wanted to dance. So, Girl from Oklahoma, for those who don't know, it's a lot like, kind of like a Sweet Home Alabama kind of thing.
Yeah,
you can dance to it.
Yeah.
It was a really valuable learning tool because I started playing it. They never heard it before. And 2 minutes, a minute into the song, they're singing along with it.
Yeah.
They didn't even know that I wrote it. They probably thought, somebody else had covered it. And then you're getting that kind of that affirmation going, oh, wait a second. If they're singing along with it, you can't do much better than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of truth. You try to. I've never sold any of this stuff. I've never made a penny off any of this stuff. But sometimes, in your music journey, that just getting validation from one person at a bar is sometimes all you need. And that's really a great place to be. Because you don't have the pressure of going, oh, I have to sell 1 million units or I'm a failure. Well, all I have to do is sell 3 drinks and I'm a success.
And especially when, we've had this before where, we'll go into a bar and we'll have at least 5 people come up and say, you made our night.
Absolutely.
What's that worth? That's worth everything, it makes you feel great to have somebody really appreciate, even if it's only 5 people, but you made their night.
That's exactly right.
That's a pretty cool feeling.
The only thing I wish that, and it's hard to say because, in this year, it just haven't played hardly at all this year. And so it's hard to build up like a following if you're not playing all the time because they're not going to be able to make, if you're only playing once a month, well, they might already have that weekend busy.
Yep.
But the more you play, the more chance you have to build up a following. And before you know it, if people enjoy what you're doing, they're going to tell somebody else, they tell somebody else. You could find yourself having 100 people out there pretty quick.
Right.
If that works out like it should.
One thing that's been fun, really nice with our band is that I think our band is probably sitting very similar to a lot of other bands around where I always talk about there's the guys that never get out of the basement, they're always talking and they never really get to do any gigs. Then there's probably the next level where our band and many other bands are at, where they're kind of, going around different bars and kind of around town. Then you have kind of the festival level, maybe like where Samantha Fish is or whatever, where they're doing a little bit of touring and they maybe would go down to Bluegrass and get a main stage or something, and then you have the Justin Biebers, the Aerosmiths of the world. But we're in that area, that third to bottom, and we're always trying to get up to that next level. But what's really cool about us is that even though we're trying to kind of get into the scene and get more gigs, we've had quite a few 3 to 4 yearly gigs now. We've been asked back at the Missouri 340, and we've had a couple of these gigs that people have asked us a couple years in a row, and so we know that something's going good. It's my point is it's really hard to judge how good it's going.
That's right. Yeah, it isn't your mom asking you to play every holiday.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. Well, I kind of disagree with you because you said that everybody's trying to move up. That's not necessarily true. There's a lot of basement players.
Yeah.
Who just like getting together with their friends on a Friday night, playing in the basement. They don't want to go play out.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, and I've ran into some great players.
Yeah.
Who they just have no interest in it.
Yeah, I meant anybody who wants to get higher. Yeah, but that's a great point because everybody doesn't want that, do they?
That's right. And the other thing too is the great thing about when you see people who are advancing or who started here and they're up here and they go like this, it really gives you hope because you go, well, boy, if they do it, why can't I do it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you're going to try to educate yourself. What are they doing different? And you're trying to follow them, and that's a great thing about music, because there is a lot of hope. I mean, there's more music today than there ever has been, but there's also a bigger audience for music than there ever has been. And it's just, you know, and I've told you many times, you know, our problem really isn't, you know, hitting the, you know, the right chords, or, you know, necessarily writing the songs. It's a marketing issue. You know, you and I, we know what we can do. We know what we have. The problem is your neighbor doesn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And it's more of a marketing issue. And I think a lot of bands, a lot of festivals, everybody runs into this, that, you know, it's a chicken and the egg, where, you know, you have the festival, will the people come? You know, there's a lot of festivals that aren't successful either. A whole lot of them that have
you got to get the big gigs to kind of get a lot of fans, but you've got to get the fans before you get the big gig, and it's like
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so, but I think, you know, my guess, and I've never, I mean, if I died tomorrow, would they say I've been successful in the music business? No, because unfortunately, a lot of times you measure the success based on, you know,
number of fans,
or what the income is.
Yeah.
You know, so no, but really, it's just a musician playing. I've been very successful because I get in front of an audience, and that's what I enjoy.
Right.
Never get tired of it. It's really
right.
It's like I said, it's that affirmation from audience people. That's why I do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
It's for me, and I don't know if every musician is. I don't think every musician is anywhere close to that, because if they were, they'd be paying more attention to what they're doing.
Well, you'd think. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've met some other friends of mine that don't dare go do gigs. You know, that I've known in the past. Like, I'm not going to do a gig. Oh, screw that. You know, and I'm like, well, so why is that guy doing that and people are actually gigging? Well, I mean, there has to be a little bit of care about the audience, or else you wouldn't go do a gig. You know what I mean?
Your motivation could be
it's money,
or,
but still, I mean, if your motivation is money, then you go work at UPS, you go work at Cerner, then you go make money.
Except you know what I mean. You have this talent of playing an instrument,
right? But I know for me, I mean, even though we're at a different kind of mentality with gigging, but I gotta admit, I mean, I like being on stage. You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of these guys that maybe wonder if because it is kind of a drug in a way sometimes.
Very, very
you know,
much
you
so.
get on stage and you get that affirmation and that feeling of everybody's. I mean, there's a massive amount of attention situation there. You know,
that you're not gonna get working at UPS necessarily.
No.
And it is a high, it is a drug, but it's an acceptable high, or an acceptable drug. I mean, people go, man, that's great. I mean, it amazes me today. You know, I've run into somebody and they're like, oh, you play music? And it's like, wow. You know, I'm like, doesn't everybody play music?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you know. And,
well, that happens because we all hang out with a lot of musicians, so we all think, well, of course you do, and
of course,
you know.
and not everybody does. But you know, I guess unfortunately, I'm not as addicted to it. I wish I was more addicted to you know, being on stage more, because that way I would be on stage more.
Yeah.
But I have other things to do too, other interests, and but I wish I had more of that. You know, that fire, like, hey, I need to be doing this every night, and it just hasn't happened. Not that it ever won't happen, but I know through my limited experience, it just seems like kind of like a synergy thing. It seems like when the ball gets rolling, it goes, and it just happens without.
Right. It's hard to force it. Yeah.
Hard to force it, and but again, I think it always just comes back to a marketing thing. I mean, if you got the product, and you should be out playing a lot more, but unfortunately, people just don't know.
Yeah. Well, one thing that has been really funny for you as opposed to me, because I've played for a long time, but I haven't gigged for a really long time, so I don't have too many really crazy stories to tell. And I know that over the years you kind of talked about. I know you talked about that one gig where you were playing on the pickup or something. Or
well, you mean the trailer one?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
like,
and this is a real quick story. There's a rodeo out in the middle of nowhere, small town rodeo, and they brought in a flatbed trailer, like a semi trailer, you know. And what I didn't realize is, you know, those trailers, the bed of them are chest high, you know, maybe even come up to your neck. And so we had the whole band on there, and we had they had the trailer, which was great for us to play on, except nobody brought any kind of ladder or a means to get onto the trailer. So we had to like use the tires to try to climb on to get up there. And so, you know, our clothing, you know, after getting up and off stage during breaks and whatnot, all had like, you know, tread marks on us. And then we asked at the time, the drummer, I don't even know who it was, but I don't know who it was, but I remember what it was because he's kind of a heavy set fellow, and he was struggling, and so it took like two of us to lift him onto the trailer. So this hand was kind of right underneath his rib cage, and this hand was right underneath his rear, and we'd have to lift him up. And he managed to come down okay. I remember that. So, but that was really fun. But no, then.
And what was the lesson for that?
Well, the lesson is, if you provide a stage, you must have a means to get onto the stage. And little details that people don't think about. Yeah, little details. So that was a.
I saw a Facebook post the other day, and it was like, it reminded us of our ping pong table gig, you know, where they put the ping pong table.
They provide a stage. Oh, we have a stage. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you've seen that one, but like there is a stage, and there's this like wrapped up, you know, terrible extension cord. They're like, and plenty of power. You know, we have a stage and plenty of power, and you're like, oh, great.
Well,
you know,
people don't know, and yeah, that's a great point. Musicians just want to play, and you know, they put us on literally a ping pong table. Luckily, they took the net off. But it kind of, for this,
but on the grass,
we played this gig several times,
and
it's kind of been a running gag because they brought the ping pong table. We played on it several times, and they get a huge laugh out of it, which is fine.
Yeah.
But they don't know.
Right.
I mean, 4x8 sheet of plywood wouldn't even hold the drum kit.
Right.
So.
Well, I know you had another one, another like kind of major league fight. Remember the one they
oh yeah,
the speaker.
I mean, that wasn't really funny though.
Right?
It was.
But that was a crazy gig, right?
Yeah, it was bar in Olathe, and we probably played too late. You know, 1 o'clock in the morning, we're tearing down. The rest of the band had left. I'm just there with the bass player. And we used one of the monitors to prop the door open so we could move equipment. A bar fight broke out between all these 21, 24-year-olds. And one of the, you know, participants in the fight walked out the door and grabbed my monitor and threw it and chucked it, you know, 20 yards. And so I'm like, oh, I can't let that go down. And so I go out and confront him in the parking lot. And I kind of knew, Of course, he's twice my size, and he has two friends with him that are twice his size, and I knew this was not going to end good. And well, the long and short of it is that the police took them away, and but that was kind of a learning lesson. You know, when your mom says, "Hey, nothing good happens after midnight." That's true, and. I don't like doing till 1 o'clock in the morning gigs. I just don't like it. Mainly because I don't like being that tired. Because we still have to drive.
Right. And tear down.
Yeah, you know, and I'm working during the day, or, you know, I got other things going on during the day, and you can't get on that sleep schedule of doing that. So that's one reason I really try to refrain from doing, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning gigs.
Right. And that was another probably good learning experience too, is that I think all of us need to understand, just even talking in general, is kind of looking at that situation and go, yeah, this is my monitor, you know, but is this worth getting into right now? Even conversations sometimes people need to stop and go like, this guy is saying idiotic crap right now. Is this even worth going after and putting him in his place or whatever you think you're going to be able to do?
And I knew I wasn't going to be able to fight him.
Yeah.
I knew that. But after the police kind of resolved the situation, they came back and found me. And they said, hey, do you want to file a police report on the speaker? This speaker's worth $50.
Right.
And it was banged up, even though I'm still using the speaker today. And so it survived it. But
hey, look at that corner.
and I would have, said, oh yeah, absolutely, But this bass player at the time, real nice guy, and he's kind of an older guy, a lot more experience. He goes, hey, don't do it, because the guy who I'm going up against, or possibly filing a police report against, he's going to have my information.
Yeah.
And do you really want him to know who you are? This is before Facebook or cameras or anything like that.
Yeah.
And looking at this guy, my guess is he rough character.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just a $50 speaker. I'll survive. To him, that's another 3 days in jail.
Yeah.
And so I thought, so I didn't do it.
Right.
It's kind of maybe the wrong way of doing that.
I think it was a great example,
but karma's. I believe in karma, and I think this guy, my guess is he did find somebody that would file a police report.
Oh, sure, yeah. I know that we've talked a lot too about, even a couple minutes ago, about the kind of drug of being on stage. Well, definitely, we always joke about, kind of drunk musicians and even musicians that have trouble with drugs and stuff. I know, I thought, I remember you were talking about one story of a bass player, and his wife came to, just all of us have had to deal with that before, of musicians
That's a great story. It's kind of long. I'm trying to think of a way to abbreviate it. But essentially, I wound up playing with a bass player one night. The bar itself was hilarious, because basically it was kind of a new bar, but all the decor was taken out of the Long John Silver's that apparently had closed down. So you go in there, and it was supposed to be like a country bar, but it had it looked like a Long John Silver's. And it was like everything smelled like malt vinegar, and so it was kind of a surreal night. And so we had the band there, and it's 9:00, getting ready to start. There's no bass player, and finally this guy who obviously on something walks in the door, and I'm like, that's our bass player. Okay. And so I asked the other guitar player, I said, because he knew this bass player, I said, is this guy any good? And he goes, I'll just wait till you hear him. And so we started playing horrible. I mean, it was horrible. And so his girlfriend at the time had dropped him off, this bass player, off at the bar. And so, and I wasn't paying attention. Well, I had to ride home with this bass player, because we actually gave him a ride home, and we dropped him off at his girlfriend's car. She worked at the Walmart overnight, and so we dropped him off. And the idea was he's supposed to go get in her car and just go to sleep. And when she gets off work at 7 a.m., she'd drive him home. Worked out really well. Except we dropped him off, and he may or may not have gone to sleep. But at some point, he decided, hey, I'm just going to drive home. And so he drives home. Well, and so this girlfriend walks out of Walmart at 7 a.m. after working all night, and gets out to the parking lot, and her car's not there. And because she's got some idiotic bass player boyfriend. And so she was scrambling for a ride just before Uber or anything. Yeah. And so I always just thought that was really funny.
Yeah. So how many of us have done that gig where it's like in a Long John Silver's, pretty much. Oh,
yeah, that's really...
Just crazy gigs like that,
It always kind of goes down to the Blues Brothers.
Right.
You got chicken wire on a stage. We can't make that up. There's some bar out there that had chicken wire on a stage. Yeah. But no, I always thought, if they made another Blues Brothers movie, the bar should be like a Long John Silver's. It was, that was funny. And that may have been 15, some odd years ago. I know the bar was, I believe, in Osawatomie, Kansas. And I was driving through Osawatomie about a year ago. I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's probably, who knows?
They probably tore it down.
Well, Long John Silver's probably wanted their stuff back. So, yeah.
That's crazy. And then I know the other one you were talking about is like you were joking right at the start of this of too much equipment or whatever. Yeah, that's another funny
band
story.
ride.
Yeah.
Well, this one's kind of bittersweet because this may have been the first band I ever tried to put together, and we were all pretty bad. Except we had this lead guitar player. His name is Jerry Shaw. Jerry's a family friend, super nice guy. He was a Leonard Skinner aficionado. He knew Sweet Home Alabama. Not only did he know, the four dun dun dun, he knew the other two guitar parts. I mean, he knew how to get the sounds and everything. He was very, very good. The problem with Jerry was that everything he played sounded like Leonard Skinner. So if you played Mary Had a Little Lamb, it came out sounding like Skinner.
Skinner Little Lamb.
Well, Jerry, of course, he had the van, and we got a gig at a wedding. And I'm still friends with the people who got married. It's hard to believe. And we were so excited, we get a gig. I think it actually paid, $30. And so Jerry had the van, and so we had all our equipment. The van's just piled with equipment, just stuffed. Well, there's only 2 seats.
Right.
So Jerry's driving, my brother's in the front seat, and of course, me being the youngest, I had to ride in the back. Well, the only way I could do it was to lay down on top of the amplifiers across the bed of the van. So basically, I'm laying down, the amplifiers are all different heights, so my body's all contorted, and the roof of the van is like right here. And I don't know, that's what, 150-mile drive one way. And but because it's your first gig, I mean, I would have driven 1,000 miles, like that. So excited. I remember we get down there and we only know 5 songs. I mean, it's really not good at all. And I didn't know how to memorize words at the time. So I actually had the words written out on large poster boards. So the poster boards were all over the stage. So I would go sing the songs, like I'd move the mic over to that poster board. And so I could look down and read the poster board. And so we did it. And I remember we were there, and I'm sure it was very loud. And people were like, my God, this band is horrible. And I remember this one guy, it's kind of rural town, Chanute. And this guy, I think in a big cowboy hat, came up to us and said, hey, you need to play something we can dance to. And we're like, okay. And so the song Tuesday's Gone by Leonard Skinner, kind of a slow dance song. I think we played that song 15 times. That's the only thing we could play that was slow. And then I rode back home another 150 miles singing on top of those amps. And I would like to say I'd do it again, probably not. But unfortunately, Jerry, the guy who owned the van and was a great Skinner guy, passed away at a really young age, and really sorry to see it because he but I learned a lot from that because I kind of learned how to, unfortunately that band kind of broke up in the wrong way. I knew we weren't any good, and I had to go find other musicians, and as opposed to being forthright and saying, hey, you guys suck. I think I just kind of quit. That was the wrong way to handle that. And again, if I would have had a mentor, he would have said, make sure whatever you travel in has a seat, and, but also how to fire people too. Fire is not really the right word, but say, because with musicians, everybody's at different levels, and you can play with somebody for a while and you kind of realize, hey, it's just not what I call gelling, where you guys all, for whatever reason it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it's always hard to tell somebody to say, hey, it's been fun, but you're just not quite there. And how do you say that, and who am I to judge? But you can't move past it. And so that's very, very difficult.
Well, so we're probably pretty close to wrapping up here, but like on that topic, I've started asking this with a lot of people on the show, that trying to just ask people like what their deal breaker is in a band. And a couple examples is like somebody falling off the stage for the third gig in a row because they're too drunk. That's obviously, you know, kind of a deal.
Which I've never really. Well, I've had.
And that's an extreme
yeah.
example,
Yeah.
but that would be one
But
that
that's a real example though, because that's yeah.
And then you have another guy, and I've used this before, of the idea that, you know, you like the guys, you're getting gigs, the money's okay, and you like 47 out of the 50 songs, but you hate these 3 songs. Is that enough to quit the band? I would say probably not. You know, that's not enough of a deal breaker at that point. At least for me, I need to kind of suck it up. I don't like these 3 songs like freaking tough. But for you, like you were just saying about is it like the talent of the people, or is it like what is it for you?
I guess it kind of breaks down. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a great way to.
Yeah.
Well, I like to play with people that I enjoy. You know, just hanging out with.
Mm-hmm.
But they gotta. What's the deal breaker? Oh, that's kind of hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it kind of changes. There really isn't this. You know, I guess the first deal breaker. You know, if you can't tune a guitar, I'm not gonna sit around and try to work.
There's kind of a baseline of ability
there. Kind of a baseline.
Yeah.
You know, I always use tennis as an analogy. You know, you want to play tennis, you have to have somebody else to play tennis against.
Mm-hmm.
You want to play with somebody that's as good or maybe even a little better than you, so that way you're hoping that your game will come up to theirs.
Right.
Well, if your game doesn't come up to theirs, don't be surprised when they say, hey, I don't want to play tennis with you anymore, because they're looking for somebody that's as good or maybe a little better than them. And so you kind of have that in with musicians. But there's a lot of other factors other than being able to play music, you know, being good at your instrument. One is, you know, what you've been real good about is availability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you find guys who have other hobbies that they like to do. They don't have...
they can never do gigs.
They can never do gigs. So
Yeah.
there's more than just that. So you're looking for the perfect scenario. I will say this. Kansas City, as big as Kansas City is, there's a lot of things I would do different. But I could see, you know, one reason... You know, people say going to Nashville. I mean, the one reason that kind of justifies that a little bit is you may be in an area where you have just a lot more musicians to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may find that compatibility. But there's no lack of bands. Bands break up for all different kinds of reasons. On the big scale, it's usually, you know, probably money is my guess.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, on our level, it's just somebody has a kid.
You're right.
Can't play anymore, you know. And that is a fine
perfectly
reason.
legitimate reason. Yeah.
But you got to be very flexible. But no, there'd be a lot of deal breakers. I mean, it'd be probably an endless list. But man, every once in a while, you just get lucky. You know, you go, hey, you know, we all get along. We have the same musical interests.
Yeah.
All those dozens of.
We've heard like Bernie Taupin and Elton is a perfect example. It was just meant to be. I mean, they just clicked, and I know. Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn was another example of a duo that just clicked and it just worked.
Yeah.
And even some of these Aerosmiths or Fish, or you know, there's just been some bands out there that have just clicked, and then they accidentally stay together for 30 years because it just worked. And can you force that? You know, I don't know if you can.
Great example is Eric Clapton. Isn't he in like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame under like 5 different bands?
Yeah.
It kind of tells you he had problems with, you know. Not necessarily problems with the members. Maybe he didn't like the music they were doing. He wanted to do something different. Well, he basically found success maybe 4 different times. I can't remember what the count is. But that's a pretty good example.
Yeah.
But even on our level, you know, it's not the Hall of Fame. Right. It's kind of the same thing. You want to do things different. You don't like the way it's going. And the important thing, I think most musicians are pretty good about it because there's kind of like a brotherhood is not to have a whole lot of animosity. Put things in perspective.
Yeah.
This is not millions of dollars. This is things happen for multitude of reasons. And I wish I was better at I wish I knew what I wanted before I ever started bands. You know, this is the direction I want to go. And I still haven't done that because you're trying to appease everybody. You're trying to make it kind of a democracy. Very, very tough to do. But
I know some guys too that I've heard, one deal breaker for them is and I talked about this with Greg on our second show when he came on here, and we were talking a lot about the direction of the band being kind of a deal breaker for some people. Maybe not for you, but others, they're like, dude, I want to do something. I don't want to sit in the basement for 60 rehearsals and then finally get to a gig, and then, whoops, we didn't ever get to a gig. Sorry, but we did 60 rehearsals anyways. It's like, and I know some guys are really, and like you said earlier, some guys don't care about that on purpose. I don't need to gig. It's not on my priority level. But some guys are like, I'm just, and I always joke about, like, for myself, a little egotistical, but I'm like, I always joke that, okay, so I've been playing 30 years. So these trenches, like, when do these trenches end? Like 40 years in, 50 years in, when do I get to I was just joking with myself of, like, taking free gigs and stuff like that, like, okay, so when do all these, as a young guy, go through these trenches, right? Well, when does the trenches end? After
you mean like paying their dues?
It's sort of like that, but also, getting into a band where they finally make some money and finally do something, I was just kind of being a brat a little bit, but, I'm just like,
wise.
When is it 50 years in, when I finally, like, make some money, or,
I hate to tell you, odds wise,
yeah.
It's a moonshot.
I know.
But what else would you rather do?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would like to say, if nothing against accountants,
mm-hmm.
but if I was to be a multimillionaire accountant, or would I rather be poor and play guitar?
Mm-hmm.
Well, obvious, I'd rather be an accountant. So
yeah. That's the trade-offs thing, because that's what a lot of musicians are willing to take that trade-off. We're willing to go, like, man.
But I think in the entertainment industry, and I really think of music is the entertainment industry, mm-hmm. and I think of football as an entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm. It is.
The cream rises to the top. The best ones who have the best talent rise to the top. Football, for only 1 out of 1,000 ever. Most college players will never play professional football because they can't get to that level. Most musicians are really like that too. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could never play being a band for a famous person because I can't even read music. But I do know there's a home for me, and there's a home for every musician, whether it's down in your basement. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's always tough. I mean, if I had the answers, I'd write a book and sell 1 million copies. Mm-hmm. And but I don't know if I can read.
Well, cool, man. I definitely wanted to say publicly that it was really it's been really fun to play in your band, and
of course it is. Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything different. Yeah.
But definitely there's been and really maybe to end this, that I thought that was really funny. Back to your it just clicks kind of thing. I think you I got your ad, or you found my ad, or something on Craigslist, and we got together with a little rehearsal, and it was 20 seconds so much too young, and we're like, okay,
there
well, there it is.
Know,
I mean, we figured it out.
Musicians have that ear.
Yeah.
But it really kind of comes down to, personalities, and luckily everything just kind of gels,
mm-hmm.
But you and I, we don't hang out together, socially mm-hmm. in any capacity, and that's okay. You don't need to. Matter of fact, it's kind of a better way of doing it, because you don't get tired of it. And there really isn't anything I don't like about doing this. Mm-hmm. I wish it was easier. Yeah. I wish it kind of, but I wish that synergy kind of, because it's much easier doing other businesses. Like in my other business, it rolls on.
You mean just rolling the gigs? You
mean
that synergy?
I wish it was a little bit easier, but it's
mm-hmm.
tough. You got a lot of musicians. You got fewer places to play based on the amount of musicians out there.
Yeah.
It's just harder. But you see all these other groups have success, and you're going, well, at least you keep trying,
right.
And maybe just keep pushing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one area I wish I was better
mm-hmm.
at. But
I've always thought about the symbiotic relationship between the Jennifer Lopez's of the world and her backing band, and I think you and I have been kind of like that in a way where you're a really good front man, but you need a soloer with it. You know, it's not enough. And nobody wants me to do a gig because it's just a violinist standing there. I need a band and a front man. So
to me, it's the
perfect,
same way. I go out my guitar and sing songs, but to me, I can only be entertaining for so long.
Right.
So the more
it's been a perfect
to provide more entertainment.
Right.
But I think Jennifer Lopez has it right though, as far as success. She hires everybody else, so they're essentially on a salary.
Right.
So if she doesn't like the way somebody's hitting the note, it's her way or the highway.
Yeah, but I mean, just like her by herself, maybe is not. I mean, she's a good performer, etc. But she can't. You know, she goes into the studio for 6 months and then they fix all of her crap. But nobody cares about those studio guys, and they need her as well because nobody cares about random bass player Z. You know, it's like, and so like I just I just think it's been really cool that a lot of the things I need, you have, and the things that you need,
That's
I
how
have.
It works,
You know, it's been working really good.
That's how you
way,
do. That's
cool.
exactly, and you're trying to. But a lot of that's just for my own entertainment. I love a violin because I love a violin.
Yeah.
It's just a great sound. I like it personally. And I thought, well, if I like it, other people are going to like it too, which is true. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. All right, well, Scott's getting blinded here, so
I get blinded. I know I got to turn.
I think we're
use a partition between the window to block out the sun.
But cool, man. Well, anyway, come check us out. Dirtgrass Canyon's our band name. This has been Scott Lane.
Hey,
thanks, man.
Always a good time. Well, actually, it's the first time I've ever done this, and so this is a lot of fun. And lose my phone number.
Lose your phone number. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right, get out of here. We're done. See ya.